How are you?
Good.
Come here, everybody.
Hey, Andy, how are you? Yeah, sure.
We need to get paid.
Tell me when.
Not Monday.
Yeah.
Oh. That's all right. Hi, everybody.
Okay, having reached the hour of 7:02, I'm calling to order this meeting of the Education Committee for Thursday, November 21st, 2019. We'll begin by making introductions.
Andy Block, School Board.
Ed Salem, School Board.
Denise Krebs, School Board.
Matt Federickson, IT Director. Chuck Lambert, Director of Special Services.
Sue Elliott, Assistant Superintendent.
Mark Bialik, School Board.
J.C. Koskevich, Assistant Principal, Council Rock North.
Susan McCarthy, Principal, Council Rock North.
Albert Funk, Principal, Council Rock High School South.
Bill Garehauser, Teacher, Council Rock South.
And Mary Ann McKee, School Board. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance here tonight, and thank you to members of the public who have joined us. We are going to have presentations on 2 items tonight, and we're going to follow our usual committee procedure. We'll have the presentation, and then I'll open the floor for comments, questions from the board, and then we'll invite public for comment, and then go on to our second presentation following the same order of discussion among the board first, and then opening it to public. So again, thank you all for being here. Hand it over to Dr. Elliott.
Thank you. Good evening, and this evening we have 2 agenda items that we want to discuss. They both relate to a recent email that Dr. Fraser sent to the community about a bit of a shift in some of our work. Our first agenda item is related to our high school schedule work that we've been doing. It's an update on that work. And then the second agenda item relates to our study of school start time. So to begin this evening, give a kind of context of where we are and where we're going, we, as a district, had started researching high school start times and high school schedules, and looking into making some changes to our high school schedule in order to provide some more choice for our students, to help us to really look at better meeting some of our students' needs at the high school level. And when we started working on our strategic plan and finalized our strategic plan, the high school schedule work is part of that plan, but another part of that plan was our study of school start times. And once we finalized our strategic plan and started to prioritize that work, as an administration, we decided that it was important to prioritize the study of school start times and really give that some focus. We still looked at aspects of our high school scheduling work that we wanted to explore further, which you're going to hear more about tonight, which is the youth lunch, or the rock block as we're calling it, in order to target our strategic plan goal of student wellness. And this pivot in our work and looking at both of these topics simultaneously, we have a target implementation right now for both of those in the 2021 and 2022 school year. And to start with our high school schedule update, grounding everyone in our strategic plan. So both of these topics this evening really focus on our first goal of our strategic plan, which is student wellness, but it's a goal that permeates throughout our entire strategic plan and is something that is very important to us in the district. And the high school schedule focus is really to try to put some things in place, whether it's personnel, programs, and practices to really support our students' needs. And that work really relates to helping our students reduce stress, helping them be prepared and feel successful, and also develop their social and emotional skills. So I'm going to turn it over to Andy Sanko, Al Funk,
Okay.
who's going to continue talking about the update.
So when we initially convened our high school scheduling committee, and it was back in last year, 2018, 2019, we started with the why. Why is it that we want to even take a look at our schedule, which has been relatively successful? So here are some of the whys in these 4 bullet points. And if you look at the last 2, they're specific to PLCs. So our work with professional learning communities has been ongoing. It's kind of been blossoming as of the last year and a half, 2 years. And two of the really essential items of having an effective PLC would be those last two bullet items. That is, that you provide intervention and enrichment time during the academic day for students and teachers, and that you provide professional collaboration time during the academic day as well. So those were two major objectives that the high school committee kind of wanted to attack when they were doing their work. The other two, obviously, student choice was a big issue. We have a 6-period day, and it's not, necessarily a question of what's right, wrong, best. Many schools have an 8-period day. They may have a traditional 8-period day that's kind of in the 42, 45-minute realm, or they may have a block schedule, which is 4 classes first semester, 4 classes second semester. When you do the math and kind of total that out over 4 years, you're looking at 6 times 4, 24 credit opportunities versus 8 times 4, 32 credit opportunities. So that's something that we just kind of wanted to address in our work. And then the final bullet point, potentially the most important thing, and certainly when you look at our current comprehensive plan, it's very evident, we wanted to reduce the stress level of students. And, by the way, not only students, but potentially also staff. So that was kind of the impetus for our work, if you will.
So when the work began, we started, and you've heard this from us previously when we sat and spoke with you. We began the work in 2018 with Dr. Reddick, who was a scheduling expert. We brought him into Council Rock, and we worked closely with Dr. Reddick and the committee that Al referenced a minute ago. The committee was comprised of students and teachers and administrators. Some people in this room were on that committee. And we spent considerable time going out after we presented to you previously. Up until that presentation and since, we spent considerable time going out to do site visits. We visited somewhere around 14 or 15 different schools in 14 or 15 different school districts to learn from them their lessons learned, to see how they in fact do a block schedule and pay particular attention to the unit lunch, which we are calling rock block. The consensus of the committee at that time was that we wanted to look at both the schedule as well as that unit lunch or rock block time. And as we left the table the last time, that was our moving forward point to do more work on that. Our thinking and work throughout this process has evolved a bit in that knowing the importance of the school start times, knowing the importance of the strategic plan, knowing the importance and the work associated with trying to do too many things at once and not being able to do it well, our thinking has evolved in that we feel that we want to recommend that we pause with the 8AB block schedule, but are compelled to say that we believe, because of the bullet points that Al spoke about a few minutes ago, that we need to keep primary focus on student choice and as well as choices for students and to decrease stress. Obviously, from this point forward, there's still a lot of work to do to move this rock forward. Some of the examples up there of the work that remains moving forward would be the professional development work, course development, work with the associations, and the like. So because of those reasons, and because we have placed an importance on school start times and our strategic plan, our thinking at this point is to move away from the 8AB schedule and focus on the unit lunch.
So as we did our many visitations And when I say we, I mean administrators, staff members, teachers, counselors. We repeatedly saw the unit lunch or lunch and learn model at very many of the schools that we visited. And each one was a little bit different than the other. It was nuanced to meet the particular needs of the school or of the students in that school. But basically, the overall model was the same. One of our last visitations to Unionville High School took place as recently as October. And I would say that out of all of the visitations that we did, this one seemed to make the most sense for us. We left very impressed by what we saw, and took our ideas, or their ideas, I should say, back to the rest of our team and discussed the various components of it. So moving on, what it would look like is this. And again, we still have so much to iron out. We want to involve our students in the discussion, and this is just an overall look at what we are thinking it will be. So in our 6-period day, we would have 3 periods in the morning, followed by a 1-hour block of time in the middle of our 6-period day to do 2 things. One would be an opportunity for students and staff to eat lunch for about half of that time, and the other would be an opportunity to do a variety of things. So one of the biggest things that 1-hour block provides is choice for students. It's not the choice regarding course choice that we talked about with the AAV schedule, but it's choice in that students can decide what makes sense for them in the middle of their day to get done. So one of the things might be to meet with a teacher for an intervention or a clinic time, or even just a meeting time to get something clarified. It might be a time for enrichment to occur. They're interested in some concepts that they learned in their science class and need some clarification and want to go on in a different direction. It might be an opportunity for students to go to a study hall and to get some work done in that block of time to be able to not have to do it after school because they have an athletic competition. It might be an opportunity for students to go to a center to make up a test. Right now, that's occurring primarily either as part of after-school time, clinic time, or even sometimes during the class period where they're missing the instruction that's occurring. So this particular school, Unionville, had a test make-up center where the tests are sent and they are administered by a person to make it convenient for the students to get that done. It might be a time to go to the library. A lot of our kids, need that time, and they leave their 25-minute lunch. Right now, they get a pass from an administrator to go to the library during their lunch period. So this would be a time where they can get that work done. It might be a time to go to counseling. Again, rather than miss a class, they have the opportunity to meet with their counselor. Or it might just be a time to relax, to take a break from the day, to go to the gym for a pickup game in basketball, or to do a ping pong game with friends. They may want to meet informally in a study group. We saw that at Unionville. They may want to meet informally as a club. Again, we saw that occurring. So really, the options are as many as we could possibly think of that a student might need to do during that time. Also, the elective programs, we're using that time to present their programs to kids through various activities. For example, family and consumer science, they might have had something going on during that half-hour break where students would come in and learn perhaps how to bake a pie, or make a crust. But, not that I really know. But do something like that during that time. They might go sit in the art department and work on their portfolio. So the options are infinite for that half-hour block of time. As I said, it's away from the middle of the day. You may have heard the term brain break. It's a time for kids to regroup, figure things out, and go about their day. It's a time for intervention and enrichment opportunities. And how we saw that occurring was really interesting. The teachers at Unionville were required to be in the hallway, sitting outside of their class, interacting with students coming by, and welcoming them into their classes. If they had a student who needed help, who had questions, clarification, whatever it may be, they then went into their classroom with that student or those students and, did whatever they needed to do. But if they weren't in their classroom with a student, they needed to be in the hallway, welcoming students, and also providing an element of supervision in the hallways as well. So that was pretty interesting to see. And then lastly, and frankly, we hadn't seen this in any of the other visitations that we had done, and that's one of the reasons why we thought this was really an opportunity for us to do all of the goals for the most part that we had, and that is the time for staff to collaborate in PLCs. And what was occurring at Unionville was a six-day cycle where one day out of every 6 days, staff members in particular departments were meeting for this collaboration. So what happened was they were not available. It might be, for example, the English department, the tech ed department, and the phys ed department would not be available on this Monday for students because during that half hour they were needing to collaborate. So the students would have all of the other opportunities without those on that day. The next day it would be other departments that would be meeting and so on. And they had a 6-day cycle. You could have a 4-day cycle, however you wanted to provide that opportunity for staff to meet and collaborate. You might wonder how students are going to look during the lunch period. Well, the lunch period would be divided into lunch 1 and lunch 2, and ideally they would be eating a half hour, half the students would be eating at one time and the other half the other time. How we might structure for that to occur, and again, this is just us talking right now without really coming down to specific plans, but it might work in such a way that 9th and 10th graders have one lunch and 11th and 12th graders have the other lunch, and we could structure that to happen by providing the learn periods for those teachers or for those students at the opposite times so that their teachers are eating lunch when they are. It's not a perfect plan because not every teacher is a grade level teacher. They teach across grade levels, but it's one way of structuring the 50-50 or so lunch division over that period of time.
So both the 8AB and the unit lunch, when we sat together before, we said that there would be an associated price with it. And we want to be responsible to our students first and foremost, but also be fiscally responsible. And in looking at and studying the unit lunch, the rock block, there are associated costs that would go along with this model. Some of those costs would include the modification of the physical plant, particularly at Council Rock North, which would include moving some lockers. It would include putting kiosks, 5 kiosks across 2 schools, so that we would have areas in the building where students could pick up lunch or a sandwich or a drink in areas in the building. It would Fiscal costs also include the equipment, the warmers and the trays and tables that would be needed to be able to provide this opportunity to feed at Council Rock South approximately 1,000 students a half hour at a time, and 800 students, 850 students in a half hour at Council Rock North. To do that, obviously, you know, some of the work that you wouldn't necessarily see would be the run of the electrical work as well as the data for the POS systems and the like. So with the good work of Doug Taylor and some other folks, including Aramark and Chartwells and Ken Kistler, who is a consultant out of Pittsburgh, we have worked to cost out the things that I just talked about. So furniture for Council Rock South would be $275,000. That $275,000 would include providing seating, 514 additional seats that would be made up of chairs and booths, and they would be located throughout the areas of the building where we have almost 2,100 students. North, $150,000, we would be adding tables and chairs and booths that would equal 220 more seats where students could be seated during that time. Currently, the cafeteria at North, along with the Commons, which is a room off the cafeteria, if you're not familiar with it, holds approximately 650 students. Obviously, there's a differential in cost. We have more students at South than we do at North. We have a need for more furniture at South than we do at North, and we actually have more space at South than we do at North. Council Rock North will require some work to remove some lockers right outside of Mr. Scott's office, and another hallway. We'll show you that in a second. And that would turn into areas where students could go during this unit lunch to plug in and charge up their Chromebooks, eat, study, whatever it is, whatever the choice they make at that particular time. Breaking these costs out a little bit further for Rock Block, across the kitchen and the custodial expenses, these numbers were derived at, again, with Doug Taylor and working with Chartwells as well as Aramark. The physical change for the two schools is an estimated $250,000. The power data assumes that there are 220 volt service stations for equipment used for the kiosks, which would include things like a hand washing sink, a refrigerator, a hot food holding cabinet, a heated sandwich slide tray, and because of the numbers of students, more at South than North, we're looking at 3 kiosks at South, 2 kiosks at North. The locker demolition that I mentioned earlier, what we know is that those lockers have to come out to make that space usable for what our intended use is. What we don't know is once we remove those lockers, what we don't know is the base that the lockers are on. Is it a concrete base? Is there a reinforcement bar underneath that? What are we going to have to do with the floor, to level the floor, putting the flooring down? The kitchen equipment cost, it's a one-time cost for the 5 kiosks, and again, 3 at South, 2 at North. And custodial-related costs, we're looking at feeding approximately 1,000 students at North per half hour over, 2 1/2-hour blocks, 800, 850 at South. That would, as you can see up there, cost us over the course of making this happen about $5,000. That $685,000 excludes the previous slide that we shared for the cost of the furniture. And for us to make this move forward and working with Doug Taylor, the fees and contingencies costing approximately $171,000 to to move forward. We believe that the township approval should be simple, with an electrical inspection. We do have to have someone look at the egress for evacuation, before we move forward with any of that stuff, pending you give us permission to do so. The one-time furniture cost that appeared 2 slides ago is a total of $425,000 to cover both high schools. The changes to the physical plant, along with the custodial cost, is almost $900,000. It's $856,000. That was $1,281,250.
So this is a look at the physical plant of Council Rock High School South, first floor. I think the next slide will reflect the second floor. So we are a 390,000 square foot building, and fairly easy to navigate. I tell students, I mean, we're kind of anchored by a gymnasium on one side and an auditorium in the other. In the middle, we have our cafeteria and our library. So when we walk the halls with Doug Taylor and Chartwells and Aramark and kind of look for spaces where kids might migrate during this half-hour, 45-minute, 1-hour block of time, it was nice to see that there are some areas that maybe are more conducive to setting up some tabletops and having kids congregate, whether they want to eat or study. The 3 kiosks that Andy referred to that we would be utilizing, one would be in the gymnasium, one would be in the auditorium, and one would be in the library lobby. So obviously you're not going to get as extensive a lunch in one of these kiosks, but it's a kind of a grab-and-go mentality. Things of obvious concern would be making sure that, the Department of Health, that we were maintaining all of our, code procedures and protocols. So when we looked at the seating, that's kind of what it looked like on the first floor. Of course, there's no way to predict how students would migrate, and they may change as the year progresses in terms of where they eat, where they go to study, but we're really just looking to identify larger areas where we could kind of make sure that we had adequate furniture and good electrical areas to do the kiosks.
That's a question.
Sure.
So, to me, eating and studying are kind of different environments. There's a lot of discussion usually during the time when you're eating, and probably quiet, I'm assuming quieter during study time. So what was your vision when you were looking at these areas for that?
So I think we would have to identify areas that we thought were going to be obviously like a library, that would be a quiet area for kids that wanted to study. Then we might have other areas throughout the school that we do identify that, hey, this is the area where we want kids to kind of hunker down and quiet time. There might be areas that, kids could plug into laptops and things of that nature. And then there's other areas where it's going to be more of a social atmosphere. There's going to be talk, and there's going to be, bouncing balls in the gymnasium and weightlifting going on and other things. So we haven't hammered out any of the details. I think, as Susan mentioned, we'd be looking at 18 months to really study what a rock block would look like for Council Rock South and Council Rock North to make it ours. We've seen 14 different examples and 14 variations.
So the library, for instance, can kids take food in the library now? Would you allow that?
Possibly.
I don't see it.
I was going to ask what you're asking about, like, the noise area. I participated in a number of these visits, and I was saying, particularly like Unionville, there were kids congregating in the hallways, in the corners, in the tables, and you would think they were just socializing. And they were, but I was also amazed at the amount of curricular work that was occurring. They were doing study groups, they were working with their peer mentors, were coming to work. So they're eating, talking, and it was more of that social learning environment as it would be in any coffee houses around. And speaking with the students, I probably spoke with 5 dozen students that day. Every student except one loved the experience of having that opportunity, that hour in the day to accomplish what they needed to accomplish. Should it be hanging out with their friends? Should it be studying for their test in the afternoon? Should it be working on their homework? Students shouldn't be seeing a teacher because they can't do after school because of clubs. It opened that up. And the one student who didn't like it was saying because lunch was too early. Why? Did you ask why it's too early? He said, well, it's because of our MDIT program. We had to have lunch there. And I go, oh, that makes sense. I enjoyed lunch. Like, that was, like, the kids really did enjoy it. And I know it seems like kids are everywhere, but they were engaged in good stuff. That's great.
The rule the Unionville had was no food where there were carpets. That wouldn't work for us because it's carpet.
Excuse me, is this year one at Unionville?
Yes. This is your month, it was month one.
Month one. Thank you.
And it was functioning very well. Were there
And I
any
would
schools
just add
that?
to that, as much as Jason just described the like coffee shop atmosphere and environment, I was on a lot of these visits myself with Bill as well as with Susan. Every school also had an opportunity and a place for students to go that would be like a traditional school setting, where it would be quiet, you have access to computer, access to resources. So there were a variety of opportunities for kids throughout the building during that time.
I think one of the things we struggle with is, we're kind of looking at this as some unstructured time, which in a positive sense, kids can kind of, at their own discretion, utilize that time as they see fit, which is a good thing.
Great.
It certainly promotes independence, but for some students, that's a difficult thing. Time management is a real issue for them. So how do you balance maybe having some more directed programming for those students who need a little bit more, this is where you need to be during this time, with that freedom?
And again, every school did it differently. Harrington was more structured in that regard. Unionville was not yet. Their teachers were requesting it.
I think what we tended to see was, and it's a natural progression, ninth grade was a little bit more directed. This is when you're going to eat lunch, here are some programs that are available, and gradually, as kids progressed and hopefully matured, we give them more opportunities with discretion and latitude.
Well, it gives kids an opportunity too to realize that they have to manage their time.
Right.
That's a learning experience as well, right? So they may just fail a little bit and find their way. Sorry to take it.
No, that's good. This is the second floor, so it's much the same. We didn't spend a ton of time on this, but we were really just trying to identify areas. And I think in our minds, we were saying to ourselves, okay, half the student population is eating, the other half are going to be spread throughout the school. What's that going to look like? Can we come up with roughly that amount of seating? So that's reflected here with the 1,000-plus seats that would be available. Again, it's not necessarily going to be that neat and clean. You'd have to see where students migrated, what their tendencies were, and potentially adjust and modify as you went through the process.
So North has a different footprint, as you can see, a whole different floor plan. And currently, compared to South, we actually have an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is that our cafeteria proper has more kiosk-like locations for students to grab food, so it spreads them out a little bit more. The disadvantage, though, compared to County Rock South, is that we don't have the sprawling areas to put chairs and whatever on first and second floors. So what made the most sense to us as we examined our area is that currently we have a cafeteria. The cafeteria proper can probably seat about 600 students, and then the current commons is not identified there, but that would be approximately another 50 students. The new area that you see would be what's called the West Common and the East Common, and that is where current locker bags exist. We did check, typically students don't use lockers, but we did check to be sure that we still have enough lockers if we need them, and we do in the school, even as our population will. So we don't foresee that would be a problem. if somehow the thinking changed regarding lockers with students. They might have time now to get to their locker during the rock block. So the other area for seating would be some seats in the front auditorium lobby, and that would also be the location of our additional kiosks.
What we do know is that we've seen 14 or 15 places, and we've seen everything from Easton Area High School, where they have an open campus, to another high school where a student leaves food or trash in an area, they're not permitted to use that area for 45 days, and everything in between. So we do know that we have to build this to fit Council Rock. And when I say build it, it's not just a physical footprint. What do we want it to look like? How do we build opportunities into that time for our kids, like Susan and Alan have talked about? There are some additional considerations. I'll let Susan and Al talk through that.
So I guess first and foremost, we would have to make a decision about student accountability. You know, so various schools that we visited, there was a more stringent, this is where the students are, we know where they are, where they're reporting during this block of time. At other schools, it was more lax, and then kind of everywhere in between. So when I say everywhere in between, if a student, for example, had a C, D, or F in the current class, they may be mandated to attend a certain remediation period. So obviously, we know where that student is. If a student was in academic good standing, then maybe they could have a little bit more freedom to pursue whatever they wanted to pursue during that particular time. But that's a big item for us in terms of student accountability. You know, it starts to mesh with some school safety concerns as well, where our students open, closed campus, we already pretty much determined that we wouldn't have an open campus. Sorry. You want to say something? So,
in locating students, because that was a big question for us, what if we needed to find a student, we didn't know where they were? Some schools, when students went into an area, would have them swipe in, so they had that accountability. Other schools, and this is really interesting, were using Canvas to send a message to a student. We need to come down to your grade level office right now. And they would get that message and then come down to the office. So there are all kinds of ways of approaching this, and we'll continue to think about what makes the most sense for us.
And beyond where what students are doing, where what our staff is doing is also obviously an essential question. So right now we have a day one and a day two. Potentially, we would look to expand that cycle, maybe a 4-day cycle or a 6-day cycle, so that staff could do more things during that period of time. For example, they might have a period of time, a day during the cycle, where they do interventions and enrichment. They might have a time where they meet with their department. They may have a time where they meet with their PLC team. They may have a time where they moderate or supervise a test-taking center. So figuring out that matrix for staff is something else that I think we'd have to come up with over the next 18 months. Obviously, examining any CREA or CRESPA implications would be something we would be concerned about. Supervision during the rock block. So again, you have maybe 50% of the student population eating at one time, so they'd be supervised in the cafeterias or the kiosk areas. You'd have the other 50% of the students, well, you'd have many of those students in intervention and structured academic activities, where obviously they would be monitored and supervised by teachers. But beyond that, when the students are in common areas, who's doing the supervision? You'd have administrators. It's kind of what we have seen is it's a all hands on deck type of atmosphere. So you see administrators during that hour, you see guidance counselors, hall monitors, security, very active in monitoring the school grounds.
And teachers in the hallways that you know.
So in terms of the other 6 periods, I mean, just from a logistical perspective, if we maintain our current 6-period day, right, about 56 minutes, we have our half-hour lunch, where are we going to gain the other half hour? So if you just do the math on that, we could shave 5 minutes off of each course. Not necessarily crazy about doing that right now, but where else can we gain back that time? So a potential area to address that would be, currently we have homeroom after period 1. It's 10 minutes in duration. Is there another way we could get students the messages, the bulletin items that they get during homeroom to save those 10 minutes now, instead of having to shave off 30 minutes, now we're down to 20 minutes. If you reduce transition time from 5 minutes to 4 minutes, now you save that time. So I don't think that's insurmountable in any way, but it's something that obviously we'd have to iron out.
Jason, you have something?
No, so I just think, if I remember to cut back a minute for exchange time, we're just shaving off a few minutes per period.
We'll pause
We're
for this.
excited.
Pause now before we move on to the next topic for questions and discussion
You want questions now?
about this.
Okay, first off, great work, thank you. I appreciate you guys drew a line in the sand and said this is more important, so let's go this direction. Before I put my costs up, I would have thrown cost avoidance up there. Just to see us up. But a couple questions, and if there's not an answer, if it's part of the work, then no, don't feel the need to answer. So does the rock block provide for the elimination of the once a month hour delay that we have now for PLC work? That's great.
Most likely.
You said close campus, so that means no kids off campus?
Yeah, so by example, Easton Area High School allows kids to get in their car and drive to Wendy's or drive to Dunkin' Donuts or
And
whatever.
think about the shopping center.
We're thinking no, and I think we're united in our thinking on that.
What about outside?
When the weather's cooperative, then we would have adults supervising outside, and we have spaces at both high schools. Some, bigger space at South than at North, but we do have outside spaces for kids.
It's interesting, at Unionville, they had, what we have, the situation where once the late fall arrives, students do not go outside to eat lunch. And the students came and said, no, our siblings can go outside for recess in the winter. Why can't we go outside and sit if we want to? Which makes sense.
And I was kind of thinking in North, the old smoking lounge.
Yeah,
That can
exactly.
literally find a way to put a plastic piece out there with heat lamps in there that could act as an all-year-round space, which might help you. Mark remembers that, right? Yeah, well, you had to fight your way through it, right? Any additional headcount costs around supervision of these larger groups now? You feel like you can do it with your existing staff and still let teachers do the remediation? Is that kind of an unknown?
We have seen, each of the schools we looked at, they've done it with their current staff, no additional cost. At least the places where I've asked that question directly, everybody is doing it, as Al said, all hands on deck.
I do think it would have an indirect impact in that right now, sometimes administrators are called to, for example, a secondary principals meeting at Chancellor or a district leadership meeting at Chancellor. We'd have to avoid that 1 hour block of time with the all hands on deck mentality.
Susan mentioned it a little bit, but I assume that the spending on the chairs and the space needs takes into account the redistricting that you'll see over the next 4 years and ultimately more of a level school.
Yeah, so we built that out. We built it with the mindset of forward thinking it over the next 4 years is the numbers of students at because of the redistricting shift. So when we work with Doug, we put that into consideration as well.
Okay. And then the last one was just around the kiosks. Is that, I'm not sure if this is a Bill Stone question, but are we going to be restricted to Chartwell's in their program? Is there an advantage if we're restricted to them to where we can make more revenue because they're doing more with those kiosks? Or can we go to community vendors to try and find some kind of mutual partnership?
There are a lot of answers to that question.
Probably better one that not
So,
put you
yeah,
on for now then.
I think the short answer to that is we need to talk with and work with Bill and Chartwell's to determine where we are in our agreement with them, and to see if we can find a win-win for both Chartwell's and Council Rock, or if it's not Chartwell's or whatever. But again, that's part of some of the work that we have to go do moving forward.
Well, I like the concept. a lot of money, so we just need to figure out how and where we prioritize. But it's great presentation from my view.
Mr. Hidalgo?
Thanks, guys. A lot of hard work. Appreciate it. I'm a numbers guy, so I'm looking at the numbers, and I think Unionville has 1,300 enrollment, and we have 2,000 at South and 1,700 at North. So I'm thinking about 60 minutes of feeding these children, feeding a lot of kids in 60 minutes, and looking at now we have, I think, let me grab my numbers. Did the research, there's 180 minutes that we have now for between 5 periods, 36. So if I take that number and start looking, well, we're feeding 11 kids a minute right now at that rate, just divide the numbers. At South, we'd have to feed 34 kids a minute, right? And that's a big jump. So that's a big hurdle to know before we go forward at what that looks like. And of course, we can't even do that because they have to eat. They need 10 minutes to eat. So you got 50 minutes, really. So it's more like 41 trays have to be cashed out in a minute.
But that assumes they behave the same way they do now, and they don't have kiosks now, so.
Well, whatever the ratio is, it's still a big jump, and I think it's going to be a big task to understand. I'd like to know more about
There's a
that.
lot of discussion about that with Chartwell. I was involved in how they calculated the number of kiosks they would need, but I know they're aware of that. And frankly, most of the districts said that initially there was a drop-off until kids buying lunches because they just weren't sure, and it was a whole new concept. But at Unionville, they said that it was pretty much up to where it had been by the time we arrived for a visit.
So, I'm sorry, Susan, I didn't cut you off, but I told you earlier that we worked with Ken Kistler out of Pittsburgh as a consultant. And provided we use a swipe card system for our kids to pay, we could take care of 8 to 10 students per minute at each point of sale system. So at South, if we have 3 kiosks, we can take care of 24 to 30 kids per minute in each of those kiosks. That's not counting what we have in the cafeteria already in existence.
And all our lunches aren't balanced. So, some of the larger lunches at North, I think the largest lunch, is around 511 students. And that's a 25-minute lunch. So they're through probably within 15 minutes of 500 or so students currently. So.
Just another question I had on the list was the quizzes, the test taking. You only have a half hour. It doesn't give you a lot of time to complete a real test, maybe a quiz.
Well, we have kids right now at the clinic to go in and make up or finish something that they hadn't finished, and it could serve as capacity similar to clinic or an R8 period at the middle school. That half hour would not be designed for like a full instructional class period.
Mr. Simon?
Yeah, just a couple questions. Of the schools that you visited that are currently doing this, how many of them are in their first year, second year, third year? Have we seen any tangible results that it actually works?
Harrison and Lower Merion have been doing it, I would say, for at least 5 years.
I don't know a number, but I'm going back to Easton. That one resonates with me. The principal said at the time, I think he mentioned, I don't want to be wrong on this, but I think he said he was 40 years old. And Mary Ann, you were there with us, and he was a student at Easton, and they were doing it when he was a student. So I don't have a breakout of each of the 14.
So there's a body of work, at least we're looking at, so not just in the year situation. And I'm not going to put you on the spot with this, but if we go ahead with this, and we continue to talk about block schedule, what additional costs were we at before we decided not to move forward with block schedule that are going to be added to this million something number that we're talking about this evening? Because I think we were at 2 million last time we spoke about this. If this is $1 million now, where's block schedule going to be? We're reducing classroom times, and then in a very short period of time down the road, we're going to be expanding that into a block schedule. It's a little concerning for me.
Yeah, there would be additional costs going to the block schedule. without having notes and numbers in front of me.
I'm not gonna, yeah, we can talk about it later.
I don't know what they are, but
Right.
areas that would have a cost associated with it outside of the unit lunch regarding the AB schedule would include staffing, it would include professional development, rewriting and reworking courses, and those kind of things.
Mr. Tate?
When you were first describing this, I was envisioning something that seemed a little chaotic. And then the more I thought about it, it seems like it's almost a community-building opportunity. A lot of informal interaction between teachers and administrators and students, which seems really appealing. I'm just curious, did you all sort of discover this as part of the exploration of the AB schedule, the block scheduling? Was this not really anticipated?
Well, first of all, we discovered it as part of the exploration of the PLCs. That's how far back it went. We started, visiting schools like Harrington and seeing this unit lunch concept. And then, as we continued our visitations, we started seeing block unit lunch. But the reason was Dr. Reddick pointed out to us that this is the way you can do the two main goals that we started our committee work to accomplish. One was to provide remediation or intervention and enrichment time during the school day, and the other was to provide collaboration among staff during the school day.
Right.
So he had said, this is how you're going to be able to do that. And we kept looking for schools that were doing both successfully. And frankly, it wasn't until October that we saw it happening the way we could envision it happening for us.
Well, I think it's like any site visitations. You see some things that you like, you see things that you probably, would not look to replicate. But it was a progression for us. I would say administratively, when you first go into a school with a unit lunch, just because you're not accustomed to having smatterings of students spread throughout, and it seems unstructured, and you feel like you need more, like, what's my authority here? It's a little uncomfortable, but it, as you kind of get beyond that, you realize it starts to resemble maybe a little bit more of a college campus. You see clusters of students, as Jason referenced, kind of eating and working, and the laptops are out, and it seems to be a little bit more free-flowing. A lot of it, I think, depends on the physical plant. Like in Lower Merion and Harridan, they have schools that they spider off down different corridors, and that is a little more conducive, I think, to it's kind of compartmentalized. I think our buildings can work in the same way. I think there's areas that we can really take advantage of, but there are unintended consequences that may pop up, and I think we did see schools adjust and modify year one, year two, do different things.
Thank you.
Yep.
Now, I'm thinking about how for 6 years I was the PTO president at South, and how every year we talked about the philosophical conversations about the limitations of the schedule and how do we help kids, and how the joke was always like, kids get their schedules on the first day, and they want to know which teachers they got, but they're like, am I having lunch with my friends? And so I just want to say it's fantastic that, we've come to this point. I think this is something really great for kids, and I think that, we're talking about, what it could be, but let's look at what we've got now and those limitations and the fact that you know this. We have kids who don't see their friends an entire school day, and now we're going to give a lunch opportunity. Moving these opportunities to meet with teachers and get remediation or do tests during the school day, and how it will enhance the PLCs. I mean, and I still, after all these years, I can't even wrap my head around that, what? We have a class where it meets for half an hour, and then everybody goes off to lunch, and then we come back for another half hour, and we could have a test, and so, we have bookended tests. I mean, that's kind of weird to me. So I'm just so thrilled to see the progress and the work and the thinking to how to advance this. And I think that I think we are going to get to see even more things that we're going to get out of it. But I'm just curious to know where in your thinking students will student input into this is going to come. There are things about what kids might want to see in the high school during this that we can't conceptualize yet. So I would love to see a component where the students are included in your thinking and planning, like piloting the ideas. And maybe now that this is broadcast, maybe students are going to be more aware and talking about it. But I think getting some feedback about the practicality of how kids approach lunch, how they want to see their students, their teachers. I don't think we would ever have that lens. So,
Going back to our visits, one of the, and Bill, you can speak to this, I think one of the most compelling visits, and I don't remember the high school, we actually had the opportunity to sit with a representative segment of students.
At Cherry Hill.
At Cherry Hill. And the students are the ones that help mold and modify as Cherry Hill evolved through the unit lunch from their inception to where they were in the process, from where they sit to what they eat in the cafeteria, what the chairs look like. They were, their voice was heard loudly and they were involved. So our thought on the front end of this is obviously, it's for the students, so we need their input. And some of that will be done through surveying, some of that will be done through conversation with students and the like.
We had students involved in the original committee work anyhow, with the block scheduling. Some of those kids are still in school, so it's easy enough to get them back into the conversation. I see Mackenzie all the time, she always asks. After Robert's email came out, some of my seniors, they want this to happen in the springtime. I put a lot of fires out, so it's not happening this year.
Believe me, I hear about it every day.
Yeah, so the ones that I've talked to, those kids, they're excited with the concept. But, no, I agree with you, I think it's valuable to have their input.
I mean, I think it's very forward-thinking, it's very progressive, it's really thinking about ways to actually execute our strategic plan in different ways. And I think it positions us, I don't know what the future of block scheduling will be, but when we talk about looking at, keeping the way we approach the delivery of education, we're going to have a lot more flexibility if we have like three periods of lunch and 3 periods, rather than the schedule that we have now, which is a lot harder to maneuver. So we're really locked in our current schedule because it's so odd. I mean, it works and it's great, but it doesn't afford any flexibility. So it's a small step to bring a lot of great things to students, but it really sets us up for more possibilities later on. So I think it's good.
And I was going to add on to that piece too about the lunches, being one of the schedulers at the high school, having 5 lunches and having classes that are offered 4, 5, 5, 6, 4, 6, that causes conflict. And it's right, dozens and dozens of students each year are in scheduling conflict just because we have 5 lunches. We can't have 3. So that would reduce that, and it's going to open up the opportunities for the kids.
I mean, it's just intuitively going to be easier. Periods 1 through 6, just a lunch. I mean, I just remember every year back to school night, you look at the schedule, what is it, 4, 5, 6? What, how is it 6 classes? All these periods, I don't get it. So it's just, it's going to make things easier. It's going to give the thought process to how you just look at the high school schedule all different way. So, great work.
Dr. Thorwart, questions, comments?
No, I'll keep coughing and let it in.
Thank you. Marcel?
I actually had a question that was similar to what Denise was saying, so thank you for asking it. So I really think it's important to hear from the students as opposed to just telling them, what they should be doing. And I was wondering, based on that, would that potentially change the way the cost structure, of kind of what we're looking at? Like, if we see a lot of people are interested in certain areas, maybe trying to, make sure there's seating in that area. Obviously, it's going to change from year to year, and so I'm just wondering if you had thought about that.
One of the things that we learned, and I keep saying Unionville because we were so impressed by how they approached it, was they said, don't go into it thinking you have to make every decision down to the last detail the first year. Do what seems best, start off, and then let it evolve as it evolves. The principal in that school was saving some of his building money to provide some other opportunities for kids. Ping pong table, I think he was into air hockey, so Jenga. So he was using building funds to, supplement what they had begun with. But he kept saying, don't feel like it has to be perfect on day one. See what kids want.
I also wonder, I know there was a mention of community, maybe there's a way to involve the community in some of these areas if they're interested in, donating.
And they had donations.
Or, or
Yeah,
helping
yeah.
with certain things from, a facilities, kind of, just a way to bring the cost down, just a thought.
During that time, would invite folks in, just like a career day, and they would speak to kids in the auditorium. So that was just a way to kind of invite folks in. College. So there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's just
This
a
is great,
question.
so thank you so much for starting it. Thank you.
And Mr. Bialik, anything?
I have 4 questions and 4 parts.
Save it for last. Save it for last, Mr. Bialik.
As everyone said, it's really great. Presentation seems very, very exciting. First thing is, Denise touched on it a little bit, and maybe Ann too, but is your thought that this would be instead of the AB scheduling, or are we looking at potentially including that in the future and additional costs?
I think right now, we're just simply putting that on the back burner. But as Mrs. Brooks said, this model has a lot of potential, and there's even the possibility of adding a day to the cycle to provide an opportunity for some specific program by grade level for students, like personal finance or mental health studies.
Did you say that just because I asked the question?
No, I didn't. I'm trying to figure out how to get it in, and here is the opportunity. But anyway, so, and the other thing is, again, at Unionville, they currently have study halls in their 7-period day, and he said that they're thinking about dissolving them because they don't need them anymore. So we don't know what this will bring, to answer your question.
Okay, that's great.
I think if I could just add on to that, you can see just by what we're presenting to you tonight, the scope of the work just for 1 hour block during the day. So to Mr. Bialik's question, that 8 AB unit lunch, I don't know where down the road and how far on the back burner it is, but it would require more of the same. So we started this by saying we want to make sure we're doing this with intent for our kids and we want to do this well. We want to do it right, we want to do it with integrity, and that will be true if and when we ever move in that direction.
Okay.
You need it either way. If you want to switch that AB schedule, you need this unit lunch, correct? Either way. Yeah, okay.
Just start with this.
So, Mr. Butler, let me just jump in there real quickly, just from a time standpoint. So we're looking at the 21-22 school year for this implementation. Realistically, it wouldn't be any closer than, or any sooner than 5 hours. We would need breathing room for everyone's sake, from a change standpoint, implementing change. That goes for students and staff.
That gives it a chance to flesh it out as well.
Absolutely.
Good. Just to comment, I don't want to get too granular on it, but the purpose of homeroom messages and updates, is that what we said? And can't we just use technology today to get those messages?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you were talking about Canvas for another, it's like calling somebody to the office. But can't we use that also just for, these are your daily messages, updates, rather than gather everybody together and?
So the good thing is we don't gather anybody together. It's an extension of first period, so it's not like they transition to a separate homeroom, so we don't lose that time. And we do have a broadcasting class, so we put the announcements on the TV, so it does serve that purpose. But you're right, I mean, between the website, a ticker tape in a cafeteria, there's a lot of opportunities for spreading the word.
That information be spread during that unit lunch around the clock.
Yeah.
And on those instances where you might need to get a class, senior class together meeting, you can do that during one of those lunch periods. One of that rough
Protecting class time, instructional time.
Because otherwise, that's a pull out of the classroom.
So I hate to bring this up, and I was thinking, something happened with a fire or something like that, because you had talked about where are the kids, but we always have to be concerned about other security issues, active shooters, things like that. How are you addressing that? As you think of these kids all over the place, I'm sure you've had that discussion and how Can you still do the lockdowns that we need to do? Can you still do the Alice protocol? All the things that we need to do with kids disperse all kids to school.
We're going to have to think about it.
Well,
Great question.
Yeah, it is a great question, but you take the fire drill as a prime example, so that's the one we practice every month. So nothing would necessarily change with the fire drills because we egress quickly outside, we line up in our lines, our designated lines, and we take attendance. We would do the same thing. If the fire drill happened, or a bell rang during that time, we would do the same thing. Lockdowns, shelter in place, enhanced lockdowns, we have to think that through. Yeah.
My last comment is, while you're talking about seating, ping pong tables, really cool, and air hockey tables, things like that, don't forget your community groups. There are community groups out there, we were talking earlier about the dictionaries we bring to the schools every year, and we're always looking for ways to do more for the schools and people looking to do that. So don't forget about that, rather than just coming to our budget money.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
All right, I also just want to, extend my thanks for the work of this group. It's a tremendous proposal that I think you're bringing to us. It's good for kids. So I just, again, want to thank you for all the work you've put into this. And now open it up. Anyone from the public wishes to speak? And would you please just say your name and where you're from?
Yeah, so for this job, my name is Luke Costello. I'm a senior at Counselor North, and I'm the treasurer of my class. I've been a member of student government for several years. I'm also the president of Rock Ambassadors, the president of the Team Footwork Club, the president of the Austin Care Foundation Club, and the vice president of the Veteran Service Club. So recently, our student government has been convened to talk about some of the major troubles that have been facing our schools. We came up with 12 major concerns that we wanted to address, from Canada to school parking, to guidance for regional teachers, and also with high school schedules. We aren't really unhappy, and I'm speaking collectively about 1,600 students. We're not unhappy with the schedule that we have now, but rather the uncertainty that is coming with the new schedule. Those students that I've talked to, and certainly the staff, are not in favor of the proposed move to refer, of the proposal that is circulating. I think the majority of it is rumor. I learned a lot from this group of patients already, that I think that I'm going to do my school here. But there's a lot of uncertainty that I think that the staff doesn't know, that the students don't know, and this is something that most receivers negative within the school finds out about Counselor South, but I can probably speak for Counselor North. So whether it's late starts or block schedules or rock block, there seems to be a problem of uncertainty around the entire process. 3 students are involved in the proposals for the block schedule, 2 from South and 1 from Counselor North. The impetus of these proposed changes is student wellness. And I would invite everyone in this room for our student government meeting on December 5th. There are many things impeding the mental health of our students and changing the school schedule, in my opinion, further aggravates these things. I think that it's going to cause more stress for students, especially in the past years of their conflict with the block schedule. I heard from my guidance counselor that a third of our school takes them online. So that way they can have 6 classes during the day they'll have 8 classes that have 8 days. That's definitely negative. Another thing, if we're going to spend $1.2 million to get an extra half an hour during the school day, that's going to be spent with kids playing on the extra. We have homework right now, 12 minutes. Everyone is like this for 12 minutes. So if we're going to go to half an hour, everyone will be like this for half an hour. That's just my perspective on it, but I think that's what will happen. I'm not sure. It's positive things, but regardless, I'm a senior. I think that there needs to be more emphasis on students, and I think that Ms. McCarthy and Mr. T. and Mr. Reese have done a great job convening the students, but I think that needs to be carried forward as well. Did you say next meeting is? About 2:50.
Her comment.
Lisa McGrath, I think. I have a daughter who's also a senior, Kylie. She's in government. I think trust a lot of it's similar concerns.
and my one concern would be clinic time after school. Will that still exist? I would say that my freshman was a clinic with a vital clinic today, for over an hour. They have a test tomorrow. That's a beautiful thing that Mrs. runs for the kids, and it really is beneficial to them. So that after-school clinic time, I would encourage you to keep that. It has to be available. My kids utilize it all the time. So that would be one concern I would have. That half an hour, I think, the lunch period and then the hour hot clock, I think is a nice idea. When I taught high school eons ago in my high school, there were just some concerns when we would have a lot of open free time. Things might happen in locker rooms, things might happen in the bathrooms, just to keep an eye on those things that maybe you would want to see happen in those areas. But like Luke said, just continue to keep the students involved. I think the kids really, even the ones who are seniors, highlight our that in that meeting too. And she was very happy that Mrs. McCarthy included the kids. She came home excited about that. Felt like they finally had a voice. And so please keep the kids involved because they do. Even though my daughter's graduating, she's concerned because she's got 2 younger siblings who still have to go through. Sorry. They have to go through. So, she does want to advocate for all the kids, even beyond her siblings, because she sees, the benefits of an all-round education. And one college also reaps those benefits every day. And he was very well prepared for college. So, just keep the kids included. They really do. They really appreciate it. I would say that they really do appreciate it.
Anyone else from the public? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is John Wall from Holland. I live nearby that country. I have my remarks written, hopefully to make it better articulate that position. So, in addition to being a member of the Council of our Community, I'm a high school educator who teaches psychology in the district as well as the North Carolina Community College as a part-time member of the faculty. As such, I represent myself as one with a serious interest in education, mental health and well-being, and adhere to this sound practice. In preparation of my remarks, Dr. Fraser sent me additional information about the unit lunch plan, which to express to him my gratitude for taking the time to respond to my query. While my remarks reflect much of what has been discussed in this meeting already, I would like to share my thoughts on what Dr. Fraser communicated to me. The purpose of this program, which I'm paraphrasing, is to help address the increasing stress and anxiety that students are experiencing today, which there are a variety of potential causes. This type of scheduling aims to provide opportunities that can allay their stress, such as providing access to teachers to improve their health, academic health, the opportunity to catch up on material resulting from absence, chances to meet with the school counselor, club meetings, sports, or other time to interact and socialize with friends as a means of a mental recess. This new initiative is part of the district's strategic plan that emphasizes student wellness. There is to be no question that addressing mental health issues in school is important as physical fitness or physical safety. Providing the student a chance to meet with a teacher for academic assistance not during lunch or after school benefits both. However, I'm not convinced this approach truly addresses the mental health issues it aims to solve, or at least in the way that it's envisioned. Dr. Fraser conceded that no research is yet available as is relatively new in the field of public education. I'll stipulate that one, although I do subscribe to the attitude there's nothing new in education, particularly thinking back to the humanistic movement in education dating back to the 1970s, which had a heavy emphasis on growth and self-actualization. Regardless, I'm concerned about pursuing a program that lacks evidence to its efficacy. The district's strategic plan emphasizes in Action Step 1B the need for social-emotional learning that is research-based, while Action Step 2A promotes data collection and analysis to determine the effectiveness of such programs. To me, the pursuit of this initiative is pursued to support the intentions of one part of the strategic plan, while overlooking the fact that it contradicts the spirit of other parts of the plan. Council ought not be the first school in this area to adopt this type of schedule. As Dr. Fraser mentioned, that this has been in place for several years at Harrison High School, which is located in the Oakland Marion School District. I'm frankly perplexed when they do not provide data assessing the efficacy of this program, at least with respect to mental health. Their district has a similar strategic plan regarding data collection and analysis, including tracking emotional wellness. I do not expect anyone here to speak for Lower Marion, but I tend to think that an initiative that affects great success, then that district would be excited to promote it, especially after the number of years they've had it. I did look at their SPP scores, a measure of academic performance, and attendance rates, a measure, albeit a loose one, for student wellness, for Harrison as well as North and South, for the years 2013, 2017, 2018, with a hypothesis that some of those differences should appear. Harrison should show higher values compared to North and South, improvements compared to 2013 if this program has some effectiveness. However, I found no such differences. I am the first to admit that great caution should be taken in interpreting SPP scores and attendance data, especially when the values of all three scores are very high. Still, a search for some evidence that suggests that this is effective has been ineffective so far. But what concerns me more is that this particular approach is chosen over two other options that have some considerable evidence showing efficacy in their implementation. I have not yet made a deep examination of peer-reviewed research journal articles that have looked at the effects of later start time block scheduling, though I know that they certainly do exist. At the same time, I would caution anyone to rely on anecdotes and news reports that law schools that have shown improvement performance for later start time and schools going to block schedule and staying with it. Yet, while a million anecdotes are not the best form of evidence, it would still be considerably more in respect to student wellness than what seems to exist with this current plan. From a functional standpoint, I do appreciate how this plan can help students catch up on work, meet with other teachers, and participate in other activities during this time frame. But I might add that such a period of time is feasible with block scheduling, such as what Pennsbury does with their extra opportunity period. As a teacher of psychology, both in high school and college level, I am more appreciative than most about the efforts to address mental health concerns among students in today's schools. However, as a researcher and empiricist, I'm also equally concerned about the attempt to implement something where the evidence is admitted to be lacking. I am not diametrically opposed to the merits of the proposals here, and so enough to the goals it tries to achieve. So something might seem good, feel good, and look good, but it does not mean that it is the best option. I firmly believe that the other two options, the later start time and block scheduling, all the solutions the district is seeking while showing evidence for their efficacy. I understand that any change will have their challenges, but the challenges should only be tackled when there is precedence for improvement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mull. Do we have any other comments from the public? Because our second portion of tonight's presentation is going to be on school start times. Dr. Elliott.
Let's turn that over to Dr. Lambert.
And I can be relatively brief since we had a whole session on this just a month ago. But again, the school start time exploration is part of the strategic plan goal 1, student wellness, to embed the necessary, I'm going to let you do that, necessary and appropriate personnel programs and practices to promote social and emotional development of our students. One of the action steps within there is looking at school start times. Thank you. We had last month at the Education Committee, Dr. Claus, who's a local sleep expert, presented. She covered the research supporting the benefits to adolescents, talked about some barriers, talked about their experience. She is a resident of Radnor School District who has this year gone to that, a later start time for students. And that information is still available
online,
someplace online.
So it's on our district website under the Education Committee meeting, the whole presentation is there.
We did talk at that session about, if you recall, the Joint State Government Commission did a study. I did not know there was a Joint State Government Commission, which I have learned, but it sounds like a pretty neat job. They are commissioned by the General Assembly to study things, and they were tasked with studying sleep deprivation in adolescents, the case for delaying secondary school start times. That came out just in October. I won't go over all of it, but a couple highlights is that they did acknowledge that the medical community consensus that we have a public health crisis in the form of the chronic sleep loss and daytime sleepiness in our adolescents. They agree with the benefits of a later school start time for secondary students that is supported by robust research, and they recognize that biologically driven changes in adolescent sleep patterns are beyond the control of adolescents and their parents, and adapting a daily schedule of adolescents to recognize and accommodate their sleep needs through a later school start time is a reasonable measure to address that. They also talk in here about the research indicating that you will increase attendance rates in our students, decreases in disciplinary actions, decreases in student-involved car accidents, increases in student GPAs, increases in state assessment scores, increases in college admission test scores, increases in student attention, decreases in student sleeping during instruction, and increased quality of student-family interaction. I wish my teenagers would have been there. One final thing I will point out from the study there is 26, just looking at Pennsylvania, 26 school districts have already made a change to their start times, and there are 28 school districts that are engaging in some type of publicly acknowledged review. Council Rock being one of those 28, and of those 28, 7 of them are located here within Bucks County. Next steps in the commission, the overall recommendation is that they recommend that we study it. They don't make any specific recommendations because every school district is so different in so many different ways. They do recommend a process that we should look at in doing that, which we have started. The first step is a steering committee which will guide the process. We actually just finalized that committee of building and central level administrators. Will not do the work of exploring and researching, but they will kind of be in charge of making sure we have an outlined process and how we're going to navigate this what they recommend, 18 to 24-month period of time. We are meeting in the beginning of December, and we have invited a board member and the superintendent from Radnor School District will be with us to talk about their experience and to give us some advice on do's and don'ts in that process.
Is that a group, or is there a leader/facilitator for the steering committee?
I think it's me and Mr. Sanko.
You think correct. That's a good team.
Good answer.
Thank you. The major part of the work, though, is you need to have a community, no, in fact, thank you. Okay. You need a community group of stakeholders. Everyone has, I've been to many presentations on this and listened to many districts who have gone through the process, and they all emphasize the importance of having your community actively involved in the process all the way through. So we will create a committee of stakeholders that will be the ones that are doing the work. That will probably have a variety of subgroups that we'll look at different pieces as we go through this. You know, we're fortunate that many districts have gone through it because they've kind of identified for us, these are the things that you need to be focusing on. So we know we need to focus on transportation. We know that there's going to be questions about child care. We know that there will be questions about how does a student get to work on time, although the research shows that most after-school jobs for kids start at 4:30, so it's not too big an issue. But they've identified all those areas that we want to look at. They use a phrase I've come to like very much. You don't want to let perfect be the enemy of good. There is, every aspect of it is going to be different for every community based on that community's needs, its geography, and all of those kind of things. There will be roadblocks, and you can't let the roadblocks stop you. You just got to keep working through them and working through them, and, you know, we want to do that studying and exploration to see where our roadblocks are and what can we put in place to move past those. Looking at implementation in 21-22 in conjunction with the rock block. And that is all I have for this evening.
Have you got to the point, or will the steering committee come up with a timeline of activities to get to?
That's what we plan to accomplish, start to accomplish, and hopefully accomplish during that first meeting of what that timeline will look like.
Do you know how long you need prior to the start of the 21 school year before we have to say yes?
Well, we know that Radnor, actually didn't approve theirs until April, for the start of the next school year, which Andy, Chuck and I met the other day, and I think that makes all of us a bit uncomfortable.
Get everybody at Matt Adams?
So we will definitely be, in advance of that. So I would think February at the latest, but probably the target for us will be, December, prior, similar to the time frame that we had redistricting on.
Like a year from now.
December 2020.
So you got some work to do quick.
Yeah, but as Chuck said, I mean, in terms of timeline, sequence of events, you know, what the actual events are, we're not reinventing the wheel here. So that's the benefit that, we'll learn in person from Radnor, but you can go on Radnor's website and see everything. You can go on your kids' board and see the same learning area and PE. They've all been through it or are going through it right now. So, I think the pathway has been paved at least somewhat for us.
I think a lot of the districts say that that's one of the very reasons why you need to make sure your entire community is involved through the whole process, so that when you get to that point, it's a little bit of a smoother thing. They've talked about, one district talked about they forgot to include their elementary community because they weren't thinking that it was going to impact upon them, when clearly it did in many, many ways, so that when they got to that point, they had problems because it was required of people. So that's one of the reasons why you want to make sure you have everybody involved from the get-go.
Didn't you say based on that initial seminar that you went to, that the first folks who did it, early folks said, for any problem you can think of, that you can always find a solution?
Yep.
Typically.
Mr. King?
Our guest from Radnor, Dr. Klopp.
Yes.
She's a parent in Radnor, she's
Yeah.
a sleep expert.
She was marvelous, and I think I heard her say that about overlooking the elementary school. And I think people have heard me say that same phrase, Chuck. I love the idea that don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I mean, it applies to redistricting, it applies to really everything that we do. So, good, I completely agree with the idea that we were contemplating doing too much at once, and we're going to be at risk of not doing it well. So we're looking at rock block and potential delayed start a year and a half, 2 years from now. Dr. Fraser, when did you say if we were to move to block scheduling? That would not happen for how many years?
I'm thinking we're going to want a good 5 years.
That's what I thought you said.
Yeah, I think anything closer than that, we're just asking for trouble.
I think it's very smart.
So given we've heard there is some apprehension with the kids around scheduling, do we have, and it sounds like we're pursuing these two things with no commitment to do them, but based on that approach, we're not thinking about block scheduling for another 6, 7 years. So is that worth communicating, sharing, trying to alleviate that? I don't know if it is, but I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. And Ellen, Susan, I know that you all have convened, obviously, the adults in the buildings to convey this, so we can get together and, think about what the best way is, the best way is to convey this, or maybe we'll just whisper them here and tell you.
I mean, it's with the caveat, I mean, we could find out this isn't the right way and all of a sudden take it right,
sure.
but at least to alleviate some of the.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I love this meeting. Like, I can't even say, like, how much I think this is so great for kids. Like, I 6 years ago when I joined the board, part of what I said is, like, I hope I could have an impact and be a voice. Because it was my kids had just come through, and, like, I remember saying to my daughter, like, we're never going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning again, right? But all the other kids still are. And so this is fantastic. I had breakfast yesterday with Mark Hoffman, Dr. Hoffman, the executive director of the IU, and we talked a little bit about this. And of the 7 districts that are working on this, they're all thinking about an implementation. Well, one district, and I can't remember which one, it may be Shanley maybe, is looking to implement next school year, but they're all the others are also taking a little more thoughtful approach. So as the superintendents get together monthly at the IU, and as you talk, I mean, you have experience with other districts that have already implemented it, but then there's our neighbors. There's 6 of our neighbors who are in the exact same stages of thinking and planning that we're going to be, and that is a collective learning that is, I think, really important because you're all going through it at the same time, and so I just want to make sure that bring that to bear. But this is all about, like, kids' health. Like, this is so important. I mean, I don't even know how many different medical associations endorse and support this. And I said 6 years ago, this is a question of when, not if, and I could not be more delighted that the when is something helpful this year. I'm very proud of our district for that.
Dr. Philworth?
I'll just reiterate what I said to Dr. Lambert and that is help my firm.
their report, they reference 9 professional organizations that support this change.
Marcel?
I more of a comment. Thank you. I think this is wonderful. I do think that you don't have to please everyone, as Mr. Thorwood said, but I do think it's really important to get the feedback from the community and the students, and so I think we have to listen a lot. And I also really am interested to see like how the details fit into this implementation goal, because I think that's great, but we just have to see like how that looks once it's more robust. But I think this is fantastic, and I really appreciate the work everyone's doing. Thank you.
Mr. Bialik?
I have no additional comments, other than I really do think it's important to get the students engaged, so trying to figure out a way to do that. I can't imagine the students would be against a later start, but, there has to be a from the top down and also from the bottom up. Not to say the students from the bottom, but you know what I'm saying. Just so we're communicating, and then it'll help eliminate some of this.
Great, and again, I want to thank everyone, and Dr. Lambert in particular. I know you've done a lot of work on this, spent a lot of time and effort. Thank you for bringing this to us. And any comment from the public? Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I'm not speaking for the school, I think the school welcome later start. Some things that I see as issues are things like athletic schedule. Nobody else in the district doesn't, if everybody else in Bucks County gets out of 2 and 3, well, games at 3, I'm leaving school 9th period, now I start that doing stuff that day. So I think that there's just a lot of things to work out. I also think that the reason that most kids are losing sleep is to get on their cell phone. I think the average time spent on their cell phone, when I talk to students, is about 4 hours a day. And that's with phones all in classes. So outside of school, give or take 4 hours a day, out of 3 hours a day on the bed. So if we're worried about student sleep patterns, I think that a large burden of that needs to be on the students. If they want to get more sleep, they can, and just throw their delete Instagram and do their homework. That's not true. That's why
Biologically, it's shifted, and you can't change that.
From my experience with other students.
And if I may interject, I'm going to accept comment from each of you, so if you would please continue your comment, and I'll be happy to recognize you in just a moment.
And again, I speak from the minority. I think that certain things we work out, I think that could work long term, but I think the community students move off from that, and I think that's why it's really, I don't have any students been consulted on it so far.
This is very early days of exploring this.
I think that for the steering committee, there should be students on it. Absolutely.
Great. Anyone else you would like to comment, sir?
Yeah, the biology.
And your name and
I'm sorry.
township,
I'm Dr. Donald Brown.
Yeah, why don't we, you can address it.
I'm Dr. Donald Brown, board certified in general psychiatry and child development. PhD in biomedical engineering with specialization in information processing and central nervous system. The data on this is very clear. It was done at Duke, but originally, roughly 10 years ago, they shifted the start times at the school. The SAT scores jumped by roughly 100 points in the first year. It is very clear, it's biologic, there's nothing you can do to fix that. It shifts as part of that. That's why the start time needs to be moved later. The data is very clear.
Any other comment for the board? No, sir?
No, I mean, you guys are considering it, and that's a good thing to do. I just like that faster.
Anyone else in the public care to comment?
My name is Walt Ensel. I'm in Papa, and I have a middle school and an elementary school child in the district, children. My only question is there an idea on how this changing the start times for the high school roughly would impact middle and elementary school? Just how to throw that off, and I know with our transportation for every district around right now, that seems to be a nightmare.
Right, and as I said before, this is fairly early days for this, but Dr. Lambert, would you like to take that?
When, those are the things that you need, why you need the community involved in those discussions, and there are a variety of different ways that has been done. Some school districts do what they call the flip model, where you have elementary and high schools flip their start times. There is actually, I think, one school district that has everybody coming to school at the same time. I would love that.
We would love
Sure. Mr. Funk was talking about finding efficiencies within the school day. There's districts that look to find efficiencies in the school day so that when you delay your start time by an hour, you're not necessarily delaying your end time by an hour. So all of those things are within the realm of possibilities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to reiterate what you said. I think that the athletic extracurricular activities after school, that's going to be the biggest question mark. And also how it's going to impact the younger kids, if that, I mean, format Adams, I don't know. But anyway, that's just a thought to keep in mind when you talk about delaying. I will only say what comments come home to me from my own two daughters who are in high school right now. I understand there's biology tied to all of this. But in particular, they were said, well, if we start a half an hour later, and we get out a half an hour later, then half an hour later, we do it later, do homework later. So it just pushes everything back later. So really, I'm still getting the same amount of sleep. Does that kind of make sense? That's a minimum. This is the student's mind. So, you know, their big solution was, well, just tell them to give us less homework. That's not going to work. I told them that's not going to work very well.
It might be.
But that's the student's thought process. So that's all I have.
Any comment, any of the
I just have a question that, point of order for the gentleman who stated his township, because I was wondering where he's coming from, the township.
Excuse me, sir, I believe you did give us your name, your residence is?
Oh, I live in Newtown.
Thank you. Anything else?
Ms. McKee, yeah, just real quickly, for the sake of folks listening at home, because I've seen some questions out there around NBIP.
Mhm.
How does all this impact NBIP?
Right.
So it's important for folks to know that that is very much on our mind. We are certainly in active discussions with the three other sending districts, New Hope, Salisbury, Centennial, and Central Bucks. We know what their plans are, they know what our plans are, and they can expect a level of coordination, you know, between the districts and, you know, Mr. Strauss and the folks at NBIP.
Thank you for that, Dr. Fraser. Any final comments or questions? Hearing none. Again, want to thank everyone for your attendance tonight. We are adjourned.
Thank you.